Welcome, everybody, to Train Tuesday. I'm your host, Jim Wiggin, and we're in the very last day of May. I hope you had a good May. I hope you're looking forward to an awesome June. We've got some great things lined up for you for this month of June. And today we're going to talk Genesis. We're going to talk about the Genesis U50s as well as the 13K acid tank cars. But before we get started, let's do what we always do. Let's take a look and see who's joining us tonight. I've got Dale, Sid, DG Model Works is in the house. Matt's Conrail Chicago Main Line saying good evening from Galesburg. Know that city well. Frederick, Engineer, Eric, Anthony, Ronald, Bob, Maurice, and Dan, Zach, Sid, and Ian. I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. We've got like I said, a lot of great things lined up for the month of June. Specifically, we're going to talk about one of the biggest exciting releases of this month, and that's the U50, built by General Electric. It is one of the most impressive locomotives during the horsepower wars of the 1960s. Now, only two railroads purchased these locomotives, but we've got some other neat options for you in case you want to observe this high-power locomotive on your own railroad. We'll talk a little bit about that coming up. Let's go out with one more round of shout-outs. We've got Keegan, Zach, we've got Maurice, Harold, Eric, and Braden is joining us as well. So thanks for joining us. Let's do what we always do. Let's get comfortable in our workshop chair, put down the hobby knife, and grab the beverage of your choice, and let's get started with Train Tuesday. So like I was saying, the U50, this is something that we have offered in the past. However, there's been some refinements to this. But let's talk a little bit about what brought this into being. It's an interesting time in railroading history. In the 1950s, the railroad was seeing an increase of trucking. Trucking was obviously cutting into their bottom line, and the railroads were seeking ways to increase the horsepower of their locomotives to also help improve train speeds without having to add more locomotives to their trains. One method to achieve these goals was to mount two complete prime movers onto one chassis. Now, Union Pacific had asked three major locomotive builders at the time to submit proposals using this concept. In response, General Electric created their 5,000 horsepower U50 model, a design which utilized two 2,500 horsepower prime movers. And starting in 1963, the Union Pacific purchased a total of 23 of these U50s, now all of which are retired by the mid-1970s. Now we're going to be offering three road numbers in the Union Pacific, and we're also offering two paint schemes. The first one that we have here is Union Pacific number 41. There were a few changes made to these units throughout their career on the UP, but this particular one suffered from a significant fire and had to be repainted. As it was repainted in the 1970s era, it also inherited the "We Can Handle It" slogan as seen here. It was the only U50 to receive this paint scheme. Now, going to the more traditional paint schemes, we've got number 47, as you can see here. This is a 1960s, early 1970s era paint scheme. And then following that, number 52. Now, this is when the UP was using their dependable transportation. So it's going to differ from our first unit that we showed you, number 41. You can see the subtle differences here. 1970s, they were using the "We Can Handle It." You also see the ACI panels on this locomotive. Looking at the 1960s paint scheme, ACI panels are no longer there. And you've got the smaller, dependable transportation, which was a slogan they used throughout the 1960s. So obviously the Union Pacific, they were the reason why General Electric actually brought up this locomotive in the first place. Union Pacific has always been a leader in high horsepower locomotives, and this era was no different. Coming fresh from the big boy, the turbines, the DDA 40Xs, this was a logical conclusion General Electric offering this in 63. Now, UP was certainly not the only railroad to invest in these. Southern Pacific was also one that was looking for some high horsepower locomotives like the UP. The Southern Pacific ended up ordering 3 of these in grand total. And while they didn't change over the years, the subtle differences could be seen. We'll talk about those in a moment. The first one we have here is 9951. Now, going back to the original order into the 1970s, they spent the majority of their early service lives working on SP's Sunset Route. They ended their SP careers in the 1970s working drag freight service in Los Angeles Basin, California. Now, believe it or not, by 1979, all of these were scrapped. So 9950 is the first one we're offering. We're also offering 9951. The 1970s saw very few changes made to these units during their time, but they were renumbered 3 times during their career on the SP. Now, Athearn is offering these in their last assigned number series, so that this is how they appeared before they were eventually retired and subsequently scrapped. $99.52, the third unit again. These had been renumbered, but these are as they appeared just before they're retired, just before they're scrapped. Now, if you see anything that you've got a question on as we're talking about these, wait till the end of the program. I'll take a few of your questions. Also, remember, anybody that's asking for different road names or different locomotives, please see our website at athearn.com. Go to the Contact Us page and use the email Athearn product suggestions to add those product suggestions. Our developers do watch that email. They do watch what's coming in there. And so, again, that's a great resource for you if there's a road that you'd like to see done or a specific model you'd like to see done. But Train Tuesday, we're pretty much going to concentrate on what we're talking about here tonight, as well as a few of your questions about the product we're talking about. Now, some of you may be scratching your head and saying, Jim, you know, I don't remember the Santa Fe ever purchasing U50s. Well, you would be correct. It never really did happen. However, let's think about this for a second. Santa Fe certainly was not without its desire to have larger trains, larger locomotives. And so our developers came up with an alternate history, if you will. Here's a mid-1960s, early 1970s that basically answers the question, what if? What would it look like if the Santa Fe had gone shopping and gone to GE? Maybe they weren't the only ones besides the Union Pacific and Southern Pacific to invest in the GE U50s. Like many other railroads in the 1950s and early 60s, Santa Fe was looking to push the envelope in locomotive horsepower, and by purchasing engines like EMD's 2400 horsepower SD24, the Yelco 2400 horsepower RSD 15s, and GE's new groundbreaking 2500 horsepower U25B in 1962, this could be a logical step in the horsepower wars. Here we've got part of the legendary livery 1651 and its billboard paint scheme, and we're offering 1657 also in its really handsome billboard paint scheme that was common during this era. We don't know if this could have happened or not. The signs point to it's a very distinct possibility, but the legendary liveries, they do allow you to kind of escape into that realm of what would have happened had the Santa Fe ordered these. And it gives us a chance to offer something that hasn't been done before. Now, speaking of something that hasn't been offered before, this is also part of our legendary liveries. This is General Electric number 5000. Now, again, this did not exist. This is part of our legendary liveries, but in the early 1960s, GE sent their U25Bs out on demonstration tours around the country in their attractive red and white paint scheme. developers wondered what if they had done the same thing with the U50. We think that the scheme looks rather striking on this locomotive, and maybe it'll allow you on your own railroad to jump into the horsepower race of the 1960s. So something a little bit different. We're offering the U50 in 3 Union Pacific road numbers, one of which is a one-off. We're offering 3 different SP, 2 different Santa Fe, and of course this General Electric demonstrator. Now there's some other things that we've packed into the U50 that's different from previous releases. One of the first things it's going to notice is for guys that buy the DCC version with the Tsunami 2 sound system. If you buy the Tsunami 2 version, it's going to have 4 Sugar Cube speakers. That's really going to make the General Electric gurgling sounds that they are so common to make just sound that much more spectacular. And let's face it, this is a big shell. So putting 4 speakers in there, it's going to be a great sounding locomotive no matter how you pull it. These are going to have illuminated truck lights. There's going to be illuminated classification lights now. We've also updated this to have illuminated number boards. Of course, the air intakes are see-through. You can see completely through them. And for those that want to buy the DC-only version, the DCC Ready features a quick plug-and-play technology with the 21-pin NEM connector. Now, if you're wondering if your layout or your module is big enough for such a beast as this, minimum radius is between 18 to 22 inches. So if you've got a layout that has an 18 to 22 inch radius, it will run. It might look a little funny because let's face it, this is a big locomotive. Now this is 8-wheel drive. So it's going to have a lot of pulling power, and this is going to look great for you guys that are in a modular club, or maybe you've got a large club layout. You can let this thing really pull its paces. Really great locomotive, and we're really excited about offering the features that we have not offered in the past. So let's take a break here real quick and see if anybody has any questions on the GE U50s. Gilbert wants to know, the red looks a bit faded. Will it be less faded when it comes out? Well, that's going to be based on the research the developers find. They're going to probably use, like we aforementioned, the GE U25Bs. They were painted up in a scheme very similar to this. So we're going to use that as the springboard. So depending on what shade of red that was, that's what we're going to use for this. Let's see, any other questions? Nick from Vegas really likes the demo unit. Christopher as well, saying that demo scheme is cool. Yeah, definitely. Robert says his dad just pre-ordered the Santa Fe U50. That's cool. We're glad to hear that. You know, the legendary liveries, it's a polarizing subject. There are many of you that don't like legendary liveries. You think that we spend all of our time and effort on paint schemes that quite frankly never existed. There's others that absolutely love it. Maybe they refuse to allow their railroad to die or get merged off. So it's a 50-50 split. Now, the reason why we do it is twofold. Legendary liveries allows the developers, when they're doing research on actual paint schemes, many times they will find information of paint schemes that may have been applied to other railroads, but for whatever reason, it never came to be. But the plausibility is there. And number two, it also allows us to bring out big releases like the U50 that in the past had a limited road that we could draw from. So rather than just doing the same roads over and over again, this allows us a little bit more depth. And, you know, based on our sales, the legendary liveries do quite well. Let's see. One more question, maybe. I've gotten some questions about the beacons on the UP units and the Santa Fe units. If you've got the Tsunami 2, yes, the beacons will function. That will be a lighting feature. All right. Well, let's go on to the next item. The next item we're going to talk about here tonight is the 13K HO scale acid tank cars. And these are a perennial favorite. We'll talk about the N scale versions later in the month, but for tonight, we're going to start with the HO. And these are just the perfect car for any type of layout, whether it be a modular layout, a small switching layout, or a giant club layout. They look good on any level, any height, because they have the full braking detail. They've got all of the features that you're looking for in a scale car such as this. Starting up here, we have Grupo Mexico. This is a car that is good for a layout that's set in 2018 and above. Now, we didn't do just all super modern cars. We did some cars from other eras as well. Here we've got GE Rail Services. This goes back to 2008. The Pro Car. Now, these are very common. This black version, this goes to the early 2000s. And we didn't do just the black version. We also did the white version. Again, this is appropriate for you guys that are modeling in the 2000s. And let's see, what else do we have? Well, here we have the Union Tank Car. Now, this goes back to the 1980s. If you look carefully, you might be able to see the build date, 1984. We still get a lot of requests for not only these cars, but cars in general for the 1980s. And so we've answered that call with the Union Tank Car in the black paint scheme. For you guys that are set into the 2000s, we're also offering it in the white scheme. Again, this is 2000s. Now, here's a few features on these cars. And if you haven't had one of these in your possession yet, think about the things that are on these cars that really set them apart. First of all, there's multiple road numbers. So everything that you're seeing here tonight, it's not just a single. It's available as two different singles, two different road numbers, but you can also get them in a 3-pack. So if you want to make a unit train, it's real easy to do that. There's two different body phases. We're offering both the early and the late or the modern style. All of the detail parts, they're separately applied. There's not a lot molded on these cars. They are basically detailed from the factory. Everything's separately applied. Etched metal walkways. We've even accounted the different top platforms as appropriate per the prototype and the different brake systems as appropriate per the prototype. All the wire grabs and handrails, those are separate. The different end sills are appropriate per the prototype. The trucks all have animated roller bearings. So we didn't just take one freight car and put multiple paint schemes on them. The developers researched what era these would fit in. They decorated them accordingly, and they are per the prototype. You know, some of the other things that come with the Genesis level cars, you're going to have coupler lift bars, train line hoses, brake hoses, all that hardware, body mounted couplers. And in this case, these are double shelf knuckle couplers per the prototype. You have the full underframe detail with the air brake reservoir, control valve, brake cylinder, and plumbing, and all the brake rod details. That's all included. So these cars are incredibly detailed, and they're incredibly specific to the road and the era in which we're representing. So each car is different. A lot of work goes into these. We're really excited to offer these again. And if you're wondering, if you've not seen one of these, we just delivered the previous run. They're at hobby shops now. The ones that I'm showing to you tonight, you have until June 24th, which is Friday, to pre-order these with your dealer. If you've not seen one of these, talk to your dealer about the ones that just came into stock about last week. The 13K HO scale acid tank cars. All right, I'm getting reports of no pictures. Can everybody see the acid tank cars? Just want to see. It looks like we've got some. On my end, it looks like I don't have any issues, so I'm going to keep on going. All right, so that is what we're offering, just a portion of the Genesis models that we're offering the month of June. So we've got a great June lined up for you, some great stuff. And again, we've said in previous posts and previous live feeds, we're going to be offering stuff that we've offered in the past, but there's been refinements. Developers over at Athearn are extremely busy building up those refinements that you guys have been asking for. And one of the ones that you've been asking for is illuminated number boards. So we're going to go ahead and do that with the U50. We're also going to do that with the GP15. And we'll talk more about that next week. So let's take some time now for your questions. If you've got some questions about what we've talked about tonight or something in general about Athearn, now's your chance to ask away. I'd be more than happy to entertain those questions. And I will let you guys get back to it and get some modeling done. And we will be back next week with another Train Tuesday. All right. Hello, Jim. Since they're doing fantasy U50s, how about a future run and beyond? Well, that's a possibility. One of your best things to do is to use our Athearn product suggestions email. It's real simple. Go to our website, go to the Contact Us page, and look for the Athearn product suggestions email and put that in there. And you never know. The next run of U50s, we might do something in Cascade Green. It could be fun to see that. Dale wants to know, are the U50s all trucks powered? All trucks are not powered. There's some idlers in there. It's mainly because of the way the drivetrain has been designed. If we had designed it so that all the trucks were powered, there would have been some serious issues with the drive line itself. So the developers have been working on that drive line. We found that having 8 of those trucks powered and using some idlers in there was a much better use of the motor and the drive line. Be less maintenance involved, less issues. So to answer your question, it's an 8-wheel drive locomotive. Anthony wants to know, what industry do these tank cars service? Well, one of the big industries they service is the paper industry. Paper mills are loved by a lot of guys that are into prototype operations because you can literally build a layout just on a paper mill. Paper mills, of course, get a lot of different freight cars, and these acid tank cars are no different. That's just one of the large industries that uses the acid tank cars. Jeff wants to know, will you keep making prime for grime cars? I do weathering and graffiti, and your cars are the best. Well, Jeff, thank you for that comment. We appreciate that. And yes, we will always do prime for grime. Not always every month, but most of the time, just about every month, we will offer either a locomotive, a freight car, or a combination of both in the prime for grime. They've been extremely popular, and I myself, I've got some behind me on the layout. I'm really pleased with the prime for grime. It's something that's unique to Athearn. Let's see, any other questions? Going back a little bit in case I missed anything while I was switching screens. Here's an interesting comment. Interestingly, Railfan Depot posted some videos of the UPU50s right before your Friday announcement last week. That's neat. I'll have to go check that out. And the U50 was certainly an interesting beast. You know, it's one of those locomotives that was designed really for the UP. SP, of course, picked up theirs, but such a neat era in railroading. Some guys commenting fertilizer for those acid tank cars. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe you've got a FS spur somewhere in your layout if you're modeling the Midwest. That's a definite good use for these. If you haven't seen these, yeah, they sell out quick. We just got these in the first run. We just got them in stock about a week or so ago. They're on dealer shelves now. The ones that we're talking about tonight, those will be available for pre-order till Friday the 24th. When are we getting our Chessy system fixed? Well, we've never really abandoned Chessy. Maybe we don't come out with Chessy enough for your liking, but we'll probably be doing some more Chessy as the year rolls on. So be sure to watch our new announcements video that drops the last Friday of the month, as well as our Train Tuesdays and social media feeds. Bradley wants to know what's the, it's KC wants to know any word on those ES44 DC locomotives. Which ones? We announced them for May last month. If you pre-ordered those before the cutoff, which was May 27th, you can expect to see those next June. All right. Well, that looks like what we've got for questions tonight. I get one more. What color is the Santa Fe U50? Well, Jeffrey, that is based on the Santa Fe board paint scheme. It was a dark blue with yellow pinstripe, yellow ends. Very, very attractive paint scheme they used right up until about the mid-70s. So ours is going to mimic that. Again, the U50 never wore Santa Fe paint, but there's a possibility that it could have, and that's why we've landed it into our legendary liveries. All right. Well, with that, I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight as we talk about the new items for June. June is a fun month here at Athearn. There's a lot going on. We've got some shows coming up. One of the first shows that we've got coming up for this summer is a local one for us. It's called RC Fest. You can do a quick search of RC Fest. It is everything Horizon, including Athearn. We'll be set up there with a booth and a small layout. And we're also going to be at the St. Louis RPM meet coming up this July. So be sure to stay tuned for that as well. I want everybody out there to be happy, be healthy, be safe, and above all, do some good modeling. Hi, Greens. I'll see you next Tuesday on Train Tuesday. Take care.